All right, I'm here. Twitch.tv/110sports, 110sportsmedia.com/live. Thank you so much for joining us on a Friday. It's the end of the week. It's the end of the week. We like that. It's a Friday. We got Big Ten football tomorrow, which will ultimately just be a slew of games that are that are not competitive. But, you know, it's at least a different set of teams to play non-competitive college football. I think it's pretty clear that Alabama and Clemson are at the top of the sport. We'll see what the initial thoughts are as to whether or not Ohio State joins them at the top of the sport, or if those two teams are just sort of a level above everybody else, even Ohio State. But we do have Big Ten football this weekend, which is exciting. You know what's also exciting? I'm not going to spend. I'm going to spend literally 45 seconds on this, but we got a real debate last night. Now, there were still lots of lies, and still a clear winner, in my opinion. But the whole point of debates is for the American people to know a little bit more about where the candidates are coming from, no? And after the first debate, we didn't get that. We just sort of got a shouting match. And there was a little bit of course, there were some insulting and things, and there always is in presidential debates, especially ones that involve Donald Trump. But I was pleased by the more respectful debate. I guess that's the word I want to use. Anyways, there was also Thursday Night Football last night, and it was almost. It might have been more painful than the debate. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes, but those are not good football teams. The NFC East is just so bad, and honestly, they should all be relegated if one of them ends up winning the division at 6-10. And I seriously think that's going to be the case. They should just all be relegated. Just go and pick teams over in the Canadian Football League. Maybe call The Rock about getting some of their XFL teams. But just bad football teams. You're now, I mean, the Eagles and Cowboys. The Eagles atop the division at this point because of their tie, so they have the highest win percentage. But I mean, the Eagles and the Cowboys at the top of this conference are combined 4-8-1. Washington and New York 2-11. 2-11. The Eagles left on their schedule Cowboys, Giants, Browns, Seahawks, Packers, Saints, Cardinals, Cowboys, Washington. So, like, somebody's going to get a leg up, and, you know, so an NFC East team is going to win, whether it's the Eagles or the team that they're playing in the next 2 weeks. But then you get the Browns, who, if, you know, when Baker Mayfield is healthy and they're not playing the Steelers, a solid football team. Then you have the Seahawks, Packers, Saints, and Cardinals. No shot. No shot. And I'm sorry, but I refuse to celebrate anything that Carson Wentz does when they beat the Giants 22-21 and they need a game-winning drive to do it. I refuse. Just bad football teams. Bad football teams. Horrible football teams. It's a shame. It really is. But somebody's going to win that division at 6-10. or 6-9-1. It was just, and it's one of those games that, you know, you look at the schedule and you're never expecting it to be, you're never expecting the Giants and Eagles to be just a game that everybody has to watch, even preseason, prior to things going well or not going well. But then you get a Giants team that doesn't have Saquon Barkley, and Daniel Jones just clearly isn't it. And Carson Wentz, who I got people in my life who will stand by Carson Wentz and everything he is. But there are massive reasons to not be a huge Carson Wentz fan. 25 of 43, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, a QBR of 55.2. Not all that great. It was incredibly hard to watch. Which doesn't help when the other thing that could be happening. Yeah, but when you're hoping that football is a distraction from the other things on television, if you just can't handle the other things. And watching those two teams play was really, really tough to watch. Nonetheless, the Eagles finding a way to beat the 1-6 without their best offensive weapon, Giants, 1-5 at the time. Now they're 1-6. I guess we can pat Carson Wentz and the Eagles on the back, but very lightly and with a stern look of, like, that's what you should have done. But 22-21 last night, the Giants lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. More importantly, and much more enjoyable to talk about, is Game 3, World Series. We've got ourselves a series. We confirmed that if Tampa Bay keeps it close and doesn't fall behind and doesn't and forces it into a relatively low-scoring affair, that they can win baseball games against this team. Brandon Lowe, a pair of homers. You'd love that. He went yard in the first inning and then went yard again in the top of the fifth. So you had your home runs in very Rays fashion. But then you also had, Wendell doubles to deep right center to score Margot and G-Man Choi. And then Wendell hits another sac fly and G-Man Choi scores again. The Rays get into a pickle when they're not finding ways to score other than the long ball. And I'm sorry, but you're just not going to you're not going to out-homer the Dodgers, especially when the Dodgers do what they did in Game 1 and they have a 4-run inning in which they don't hit a home run. The Dodgers got all of their runs on homers. It started with a Chris Taylor homer in the bottom of the fifth, and then you got a bottom 6 Will Smith homer and a bottom 8th Corey Seager homer. 7 home runs in the playoffs now, I believe, is the number for Seager now, which is just absolutely crazy. But when you get a good pitching performance, and that's really what I was looking for early in this series from the Rays, is if they could get a game under their belt that they win, in which it makes sense that they won it. Let me elaborate on that. Or it makes sense, let me phrase it this way. It makes sense that they could replicate that. So here's what they have to replicate. They have to replicate getting on the board first. Well, let's do a couple things here. You have to replicate solid starting pitching. Blake Snell, he only went 4 2/3. He gave up 2 earned runs, but it was really just the one mistake in the bottom of the fifth. Is that what I said? I think that was when the first home run was. Yes, Chris Taylor's bottom of the fifth 2-run home run. So they got on the board first. Low on the board first. They scored another 2 runs in the top of the fourth. They're up 3-0. Get off to a good start. Don't feel like you have to press and play from behind against this Dodgers team. Because the Rays are kind of like... The Rays are that... The Rays are that football team that you feel really good about as long as they're not down by 2 touchdowns because you have no faith in the offense to come back. It's the football team that has a game manager at quarterback and you're holding on to, you're really hanging your hat on the defensive end to keep things close, and you're hoping that the offense can get off to a good start and the opposing team's offense has to press, and then that's when your defense is even better. That's basically in a nutshell what the Rays are doing here. You try to get a run on the board early. In this game, they were able to do it via Brandon Lowe for a top of the first homer. You get solid starting pitching. Like I said, apart from, Blake Snell only gave up 2 hits in this game in his 4 2/3. One of them just happened to be a 2-run shot. So you get off to a good start. You get good starting pitching. You piece together a really solid bullpen effort. The bullpen went, let's see, that's 3 innings, 4 1/3. Right, that's good math. 4 1/3. They give up 3 runs, but the Rays were able to score to keep scoring, and that's just not something that they're typically able to do. They put up 5 of their 6 runs in 3 innings. They had 3 straight innings of runs, and that's just not something you're seeing from the Rays all that much. But a 6-4 win. And if it was a 4-2 win, I'd feel even more strongly about this. This is the kind of win the Rays can replicate. Now you have Walker Buehler and Charlie Morton in Game 3. We get back to I'm not a huge Tony Gonsolin fan, and it was clearly trying to piece together a bullpen game for Dave Roberts. He ended up throwing 7 pitchers in this game, and nobody threw more than 2 innings worth of work. And the only guy to really get lit up was Dustin May, who gave up 4 hits and 3 earned runs. What I'm really curious to see is can they do that again? If they win a 3-1, 4-2, 5-2, 5-3 affair in Game 3, then this is a series that they can absolutely win for more reasons other than they're up 2-1, and obviously they can win a series if they're up 2-1 through 3. Because you took advantage of the Dodgers piecing together a bullpen game while you have Blake Snell on the mound. And then you win a game in which the Dodgers throw out their second guy, and you throw out your second, third guy, however you feel about Charlie Morton, however you feel about Tyler Glasnow, probably their third guy, if you want to talk about how you'd rank those pitchers. Then you're in a very manageable situation, and you've won a game against the Dodgers in which you both throw out really good pitchers, and you've got multiple solid starting pitching performances in a row. Because then at that point, you're gonna get to run these pitchers back, all 3 of them. Because if they're up 2-1, I find it hard to believe that this series doesn't go 7. The Rays, that is. The Rays are up 2-1. I find it hard to believe that the series doesn't go 7. I just don't see the Rays losing 3 straight to the Dodgers, even if they end up losing the series. So you get to throw all 3 starters back out there again. And the first time around, you won 2 of the 3. This is the type of game that the Rays can win. Going down 8-1 for more reasons than one is not the recipe for success, but even more so for the Rays. And they're not going to win games in which starting pitching for both sides is bad and you're into your bullpens, in the bottom of, in the 3rd inning for both teams because both pitchers gave up 4 runs in the first 3 innings. The Rays aren't going to win that type of game, at least not usually. But if they can get out to a good start, get good starting pitching to accompany a couple hits early in the game that put a couple runs on the board, then there's definitely a way for the Rays to win this series. Now, I still think the Dodgers will ultimately win this series, but I was looking for a performance in Game 2. First of all, they had to get that one. Like, if they lose the game in which the Dodgers are piecing together bullpen, if they don't win that game, then they're just out of luck. But they found a way to win that game. And not only did they find a way to win it, they found a way to win it in a fashion that I think is very replicable for a Rays team that is built the way that it is. And they also returned to their bread and butter a little bit here. I thought Glasnow got a lot longer leash than any Rays pitcher has gotten this season. This season, he threw more pitches than any Rays starter had thrown all season, and he was leaking oil, and we talked a little bit about this on the last show. But they returned to their ways, so to speak. Bottom of the 5th. Excuse me, not bottom of the 5th. No, yes, bottom of the 5th. Taylor homers to right, then Seager singles. Betts walks, Seager singles, and then, sorry, Blake Snell, you're out of there. Glasnow was leaking oil, and they still kept putting him out there. You get Nick Anderson in there. You get Justin Turner to strike out swinging to end the 5th, and then you've stopped the bleeding there 5-2. Wendell hits a sac fly in the top of the 6th to get it to 6-2, and then you've got room to work with. Pair of solo shots for the Dodgers. Ends up not mattering. You win the game 6-4. I thought it was a very Rays baseball game. And the type of game that the Rays can continue to win. Tonight will be really interesting. Like I said, Charlie Morton and Walker Buehler on the mound for these two teams. It's crazy. Morton is almost 10 years older than Buehler. Both pitchers struggled in the regular season, but both have been outstanding during the postseason and will be pitching on extra rest. Shouts to Chris Brown for that information. And for what it's worth, the Game 3 winner in a best-of-7 postseason series tied at 1-1 has gone on to win the series 69.1% of the time, which honestly isn't quite as high as I thought it might be, but clearly an important Game 3 here. Could be a swing game, especially for the Rays, who are going to probably need to to piece together a bullpen game in Game 4, and that just makes that an easier decision to make rather than maybe trying to throw Glasnow on short rest or whatever it might be. Big time game here for both teams, but specifically the Rays, I think. I'm excited, and I like it just feels more like a regular series if we get off days in between. I like the fact that we've got some off days here. I think it adds to the strategy because it creates more choices rather than just, we play a game every day for 7 days and there's just not a whole lot of room to maneuver. I like the off days, and I'm excited about Game 3 of the World Series. Coming up next, Stan Van Gundy has left the broadcast booth and is back on the sidelines in New Orleans. And Pat Chambers has resigned as the head coach of Penn State men's basketball. We'll talk about both of those things coming up next on the JMULL Show, 110sportsmedia.com. All right, I'm here. I'm here. I've been here. I'm back. Twitch.tv/110sports, 110sportsmedia.com/live. My name is Josh. This is the JMULL Show. Thank you so much for joining us on a Friday. We got baseball tonight, football tomorrow. I'm pretty excited, actually. I'm excited for the first 12 minutes of all Big Ten games until it's 27-3 after the first quarter, and it's not exactly all that exciting anymore. That's okay, though. That's okay. Like I said at the top of the show, I'm excited. I'm interested to see is Ohio State on that level with Clemson and Alabama. Now, they could be they won't look as sharp as those teams did last week, of course, but I think it'll be clear pretty quickly in the next couple weeks if Ohio State really is one of those teams to challenge those other two teams, or if they'll just be the Big Ten representative in the college football playoff, but they take a first-round exit to either Clemson or Alabama. I think either is possible. I think the latter is likely because what Alabama, those two offenses, and maybe that's what we're talking about here, is Ohio State's offense good enough to go toe-to-toe with those two offenses? Because I don't think there isn't going to be a team in the college football playoff that is hanging their hat on defense, and you have this all right, you have this elite offense versus this elite defense. That's kind of what we had with Georgia and Alabama scored 41 points on Georgia's defense. So yeah, and of course Ohio State is always their offense is always elite. Of course, Clemson under Trevor Lawrence, the same can be said for them. And then Mac Jones, statistically speaking, is having a better season so far than Tua, which is a little crazy to think about. Stan Van Gundy. If you watch some bubble basketball, you're familiar with him. And if you're just a basketball fan in general, you're familiar with him. He's been around for a long time, been coaching for 40 years. He's been a head coach in the NBA for roughly 20 now. And he has left the broadcast booth, returning to the sideline in a pattern that is very much the way that Van Gundy has done things. He was the Heat coach from 03 to 05, took a 2-year break before taking the Magic job in 2007. He was there from 2007 to 2012. And then he took the head coach and president of basketball operations job in Detroit, was there until 2018. And then just a couple of days ago, it was announced that he's the new guy on the sidelines in 2020 for the New Orleans Pelicans. A couple things here that I want to mention. First of all, I'm sad to see him go from broadcast. I think he has I think his insight, coupled with his just easy to listen to voice, made him really, really nice in the commentating booth. So I will admit I'm a little sad that he's not going to be calling basketball games next season. With that being said, and on the surface it's a reasonable question to ask. What does Stan Van Gundy do for the New Orleans Pelicans that Alvin Gentry doesn't? And the first answer to that question is that Stan Van Gundy's a better basketball coach from a peak success perspective. He just is. He also took the Orlando Magic job in a similar situation, I believe. I know he took the Orlando Magic job. I think, though, that he was in a very similar situation there to the situation he's in now in New Orleans. When he took that Orlando Magic job, there was a 22-year-old kid on that team named Dwight Howard. Superstar potential, big guy. Center your team around him. Sound familiar? Zion Williamson, superstar potential, big guy, build your team around him. And Van Gundy's also just a great teacher of the game. And I'm not sure Gentry was. And as for the other guys that you could bring in this spot, I think you need an older guy, a more established guy to warrant respect from these younger players. I don't think going and getting a guy that's 40 years old was the move here necessarily. And I also don't think D'Antoni would have been the right guy. It would have been interesting to see what he could do with Zion Williamson if he tried to do something similar to what he did with James Harden when they made that trade to get James Harden from Oklahoma City. So that would have been intriguing, yes. But also, Zion Williamson doesn't have the skill set to thrive as the main guy in a D'Antoni system. James Harden, Steve Nash, when he was in Phoenix, and then Zion Williamson. You can see the obvious differences there. Zion, I think, is best without the ball in his hands at this point. He's in the pick and roll. That's a silly thing to say, but he's not creating a ton of shots for other people right now. He asserts his will in the interior. He's quick. He's hard to guard. All of these things that make Zion elite. We know. I don't need to explain to you why Zion Williamson is elite. but he's not flashy. He's not going to be the guy with the ball in the pick and roll, and certainly not the guy that you want isolating on the perimeter. And I don't think D'Antoni wants to teach a bunch of guys how to function in the NBA and win in the NBA. I think D'Antoni wants to win now. And the Pelicans aren't going to win now. The Pelicans aren't going to make the playoffs next year. And that doesn't mean that they're not moving in the right direction. That's more of a commentary on how freaking good the West will be. But with that being said, I like the hire. I do. I think he's going to be a good teacher. I think he's been in a similar situation before, and that he'll be a good voice, a good old, steady, experienced voice in a locker room of a lot of young basketball players. Specifically, of course, Zion Williamson. Pat Chambers stepping down as the Penn State head men's basketball coach. In case you're not familiar with the situation, back in June, I believe, Rasir Bolton, who was a previous Penn State basketball player who transferred to Iowa State, opened up about why he transferred to Iowa State, talking about Pat Chambers' comment about there being a noose around his neck, around Rasir's neck, and just clearly, Pat Chambers clearly not getting it. And then Chambers not ever, in Rasir's testimony, statement, whatever word you want to use, saying that Chambers didn't take responsibility for his actions, saying things like he was from the North and wasn't aware. And said that due to his interactions with Coach Pat Chambers, he knew that wasn't a slip of the tongue. That was something that was ingrained in him, and a repeat offense, and there was just a sense of bad culture in the Penn State locker room after new allegations surfaced shortly after the Undefeated's article with Rasir Bolton, and then just a couple weeks ago there was more allegations that had something different to do, that had nothing to do with Rasir Bolton. And so Pat Chambers stepped down and resigned as the head coach of Penn State men's basketball. He said, in quote, "Today I'm announcing my departure from Penn State. I'm so proud of all our program has accomplished these past 9 years, and I will be forever grateful to the Penn State community for its ongoing support. Anyone who has ever coached, especially at this level, knows the exceptional amount of energy and focus it takes to deliver each and every day. This has been an incredibly difficult year for me and my family, and we are in need of a break to reset and chart our path forward. So I'm taking a step back to prepare myself for the next 20 years, and while I do, I'll celebrate all we accomplished." And then he goes on to list things about wins and facility upgrades and academic honors for some of his student athletes. A couple things here, and all of those things I just said about allegations thing reported by ESPN. You can find that article on their website. My immediate reaction to this, first of all, he talks about it being a tough year on his family. Bro, it's been a tough year on your family because of your actions and your actions alone. The backlash that you're receiving is because of your actions alone and your insensitivity to a young black man. So taking a role here and saying something like, "This has been an incredibly difficult year for me and my family. We're in need of a break to reset and chart our path forward." I'm not here for this making you seem like the victim here. All that has come to you in the last 4 months, Pat Chambers, is a result of your actions and your actions alone. Now, I'm not trying to invalidate hardship. Every family, especially now, has some sort of hardship. But to step back and not take the obvious opportunity to apologize again to Penn, even if you want to do it in a very vague and in specific way, and say to the Penn State men's basketball program, to the university, to anybody I might have done, this is a result, because clearly him not winning basketball games at a high level was not going to get him fired. 9 years with Penn State, and he didn't go to the NCAA tournament once. 9 years. Hovering around 500 most of those years, being a little worse some of those years. They were on their way to an NCAA tournament 2019-20 before the pandemic, but the point is still the same, that his record is not the reason that he is resigning, and I find it hard to believe that there wasn't some pushing, some nudging from Penn State and that athletic department. But all of this is a result of what he clearly just doesn't get. And this statement is all about making him the victim and then celebrating what he's done at Penn State. It just makes you look like you don't get it. That's what it makes you look like. And I don't especially understand it. I know, this doesn't absolutely surprise me. Of course, the ESPN reporting that there were more allegations. I thought that he was not going to get fired by this. I thought if he was going to get fired because of this, it was going to be a lot closer to when Rasir Bolton came out and talked on Twitter and in the Undefeated article about the things that Chambers had said. But that's clearly a part of it. Here it just took 6 months for it to happen. Anyways, Pat Chambers, after 9 years at the helm in Penn State men's basketball, stepping down from his position, and we'll see what happens with Penn State from there, and we'll also see where him saying I'm taking a step back to prepare myself for the next 20 years makes it sound like he intends on getting another head coaching position in college basketball. We'll see what kind of position he can get. Honestly, I'm not sure that that's the kind of guy I want going into people's homes to try and sell them on my program, especially going into the homes of young black men and trying to sell them on my program, given his track record. But we'll see. I'm sure he'll end up back in the sport somewhere. It will just be interesting to see where that is exactly. Coming up next, we'll do the podium. We're just going to look at 3 Big Ten games in particular for the upcoming weekend, and then do some FYI. Get out of here on Friday. You're watching the JMULL Show. 110sportsmedia.com. All right, so I'm switching up what we're going to talk about. and it was and essentially it's and maybe the Big Ten wasn't trying to make themselves look like a conference that cared about the pandemic in a way that the Big 12, ACC, and SEC didn't. Maybe that wasn't the intent. Maybe it was. Pushing back your start date to 2 months, essentially 2 months, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. What are we in, week 8, right? Maybe a little. I don't know. The point being is that you push it back. You initially cancel sports in the Big Ten, so on and so forth. Great, awesome. It certainly communicates something about caring for your athletes. The top story in Madison, Wisconsin. Tonight, Illinois faces Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin. The top story in Madison, Wisconsin on Thursday was how overwhelmed the health department is by cases of COVID-19. That it can't keep up with standard tracing protocol. But yeah, let's have a football game. Let's host a football game. Wisconsin versus Illinois. Let's do it. In Indiana, 180 new hospitalizations on Wednesday. Most since August 31st. 412 patients in intensive care, the most since late May. The Star reported, Indianapolis Star, being from having gone to school in Indianapolis, we call it, it's just the Star around there. But the Indianapolis Star reported that the state announced 2,880 new cases of the coronavirus on Thursday. Yet another record. 42 additional deaths. Both Indiana and Purdue play home games on Saturday. And because the governor is keeping things open because he wants to be reelected, they're going to be fans. In Ann Arbor, local health officials issued a stay-at-home order for the next 2 weeks. In Ann Arbor, Michigan's on the way to Minnesota. I really hope that nobody gets sick because of it. But this is the perfect example as to why the biggest thing that's changed with the coronavirus in the last 7 months is the public's perception of it. And the willingness to let cases be a thing. In literally every single way except maybe mortality rate. That doesn't mean that less people are dying necessarily. That means that a smaller percentage of the people who get it are dying. But we've decided that cases are a necessary byproduct of everything. College football being one of them. We've also decided that it officially doesn't matter what the numbers are saying. In terms of numbers, everything should be shut down if they were shut down in April. Everything should be. It is far worse now than it was in April. From a cases per day perspective. Over 70,000 people. 70,000 cases every day in this country. 70,000. Basically one football stadium every day. Every day. So we could be heading for an incredible college football Big Ten return. Ohio State could be awesome. There could be no COVID cases in Big Ten sports, but it could be awesome. It could be lit. For those of you listening on the podcast, I wish you could see my bravado and my grandness of gestures. Would love for you to be able to see it. But you could also be heading towards crisis. Another crisis. Because nothing going on in these areas suggests that we should be playing football. Nothing. But we are. But we are. And it's just the Big Ten so deeply at one point seemed to care about its responsibility for public health. What changed? There's nothing stopping you from saying these teams can't play. But at least at the very least, you can give up the jig. Because if you really did think that, you wouldn't be playing football. It's quite that simple. Illinois at Wisconsin, Nebraska at Ohio State, Rutgers at Michigan State, Penn State at Indiana, Iowa at Purdue, Michigan at Minnesota, Maryland at Northwestern. Those are your games tonight. Tonight is Illinois, Wisconsin. Tomorrow, the remaining 6 games. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Find it hard to believe it's going to go super well. And it depends on what you think what your definition of well is. But the places these games are being played in are not doing well. That's indisputable. But yeah. Let's go play football. Yeah. Yes. Game 3, for your information. Game 3, World Series. Dodgers, Rays. I believe it's an 8:09 Eastern first pitch. You got Walker Buehler, Charlie Morton, 1-1 in the series. 2 games. That one game went the way of the Dodgers. The other game went the way of the Rays. We like that. It's a competitive series we've got on our hands. All right. Competitive series. And then, of course, Touchline Talk, Josh Doring. 11 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday. Followed by Chris Brown. And Around the Bases. Listen, on Tuesday, we could have... we're either going to be talking about Game 6 on Tuesday with Chris Brown, or we're talking about a World Series champion. That's certainly... We got 3 games in a row here. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There'll be off day Monday. They'll be back at it again on Tuesday. At least I think that's the way it's working out, because it's 2-3-2. But they'll be back on Tuesday to cover all things. We're going to record an episode of The Bonfire this afternoon, so be on the lookout for that later today and tomorrow or tomorrow morning, depending. But a new episode of that. We got a new episode of the Jays for Days podcast. We talked about some of the things that I just talked about with coaches and added some other flavor in there as well. But I'll be back on Monday. We'll talk some football from over the weekend. We'll talk baseball. We'll see what's happening on Monday, and we'll break it down per usual in this hour on the JMULL show. But until then, please take care of yourselves. Okay? Please. COVID-19 hasn't gone anywhere. So please take care of yourself. If you're watching football, do it responsibly. And please take care of yourself. Take care of each other too. That's a big one. Just keep other people in mind. Because that will really help if we just keep each other in mind instead of worrying about how much we're being threatened individually. I'll be back on Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here, twitch.tv/110sports, 110sportsmedia.com/live. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a nice weekend. I will see you on Monday.